Welcome to the rest of the story of the stainless steel versus carbon steel adventure. So that's the stainless steel knife. I just cut a lemon for my daughter, and so this thing has got a bit of a, now it's got a bit of a patina on it. And that was just cutting up one lemon, and then I wiped it down with my finger, and I let it dry, and then I washed it off, and it developed this look to it. And over time, those spots will build up. It's healthy oxidation in that it is not fully rusted. It's not rust, it's just a film of oxidation on the very outside layer of the metal that causes it to get that patina on it. They call it a patina. It's essentially a formation of iron oxides. There's a lot more to this than just whether or not you should get stainless steel or carbon steel. This is also considered stainless, so it's tool steel. So carbon steel, there's a lot of myths surrounding carbon steel, or just blatant falsehoods with it. But for the average user, most people are not going to notice the difference. So carbon steel, like we said in the short, is not harder than stainless. Stainless steel, because of those chromium carbides, is a harder steel. The chromium carbides are several magnitudes harder than iron carbides. So you'll be able to get these just as sharp, but they do have a tendency to corrode. The only advantage I see to having a carbon steel blade is to having that patina on there that tells kind of the story of what you've done with your knife. They're very popular because they're easily machined, they're easily sanded and sharpened and turned into exceptionally good blades. They're forgeable, so guys at home can do them for relatively cheap and get a piece of bar stock and make your own knife. You don't need any kind of special equipment. With stainless steel, it's not going to be as easily as a process. So it's really popular still. It's pretty strong. It's a steel. It's still steel. Both of these knives have the same amount of carbon. It's 0.8 to 1% carbon in both of them. This is 12C27 and this is just 1095. 1095 is an extremely popular knife steel. It's easy to make, it's easy to maintain, it's easy to forge, it's easy to do all the things that a guy in his home blacksmith shop is going to want to do with it. So in that essence, it's pretty good. And honestly, the average guy behind the knife, especially if it's a new guy, is not going to know the difference or feel a difference between a carbon steel blade and a stainless steel blade. Now the stainless will be a little bit harder to sharpen, but once it gets sharpened, it's gonna keep that edge a bit longer. It'll never develop this kind of a patina look to it, but it should keep its edge a little bit longer. Now stainless steel. So stainless steel is only stainless because it has that chromium in it. Chromium, when it combines with oxygen, creates chromium oxide, and it creates a film that's microns or maybe sub-microns thick over the entire outside of the steel that prevents further oxidation. It blocks any of that oxygen from reaching any more steel. But it's not impervious to rust. A stainless steel blade, when not cared for, will rust not as quickly as a carbon steel blade, but it still develop little specks of rust on it. That's because it's not fully stainless. To get a fully stainless blade is something called austenitic stainless, and that has 20+% chromium in it. It's non-magnetic, it's non-hardenable, but it's what your pots and pans in the kitchen are made out of. You actually cannot do that with a knife because it just won't be a strong enough knife. It's going to bend and flex and warp and won't hold an edge at all. So stainless steel, but yeah, like we said, the chromium carbides in the stainless will make it so this blade has a little bit harder of an edge. It's harder to work with in a home blacksmith, a home shop. You're going to make a knife out of it. It's going to take a little bit more to form the bevels, etc. It is a harder steel than a carbon steel blade, but once you do get it sharp, it should stay sharp longer. Now, if you want to get even a harder blade, you're going to go into your tool steels like O1, A2, and D2. O1 is kind of the 1095 version, is the tool steel that's kind of like, it does have chrome in it, but it's less than 1%, and I don't have an A1 steel or an O1 steel knife here, so but it does add the molybdenum and vanadium, and I forget if it has tungsten in it, but those oxides, they are not oxides, they readily combine with carbon to create ultra strong carbides that work very well for tools. My preference is D2. This is a stainless version of tool steel, so it also has vanadium in it, tungsten in it, small amounts of it, chromium in it, and it can have every bit as much carbon as a carbon steel blade, but those added components, added metals, increase the toughness and wear resistance of the blade, so it's going to keep an edge longer. It will affect the brittle. Like everything in metallurgy is a give and take, so it will affect the durability of the steel. The ability for the steel to take a beating. And so if you really want a knife to baton with, to abuse, you may steer clear of tool steels. But that said, the amount of force it would take to break one of these, I mean, if you're breaking a tool steel blade like this, even 1/8 of an inch thick, you're doing something wrong. You should have an axe for that job or something else. But tool steels are an incredibly strong blade. Right now, my go-to is D2 tool steels. Now, there is a third class, or if you're counting that as a class of its own, there's a fourth class of steel, and that's your powder metallurgy steels, or powder met steels, otherwise commonly called super steels. The reason I separate them is the way that they're built is completely different to anything else. I don't have one. They're very expensive because the manufacturing process in them is very, very difficult. Essentially what they do is they take all the steels and mix it together in the appropriate amounts to make whatever metal they want to make. Say they want to make D2, they'll put some vanadium in there and some molybdenum in there and some tungsten in there. The carbon and the steel, the iron with the carbides, and they'll bring it to a liquid. Now, in a regular steel knife, that liquid will be poured into a mold and let to solidify. Now, the problem with that is those metals solidify at different rates, and different portions of that mold will solidify at different rates. So you end up with a slight segregation of materials. You get like materials binding together in larger clumps. They're just microscopic, but they bind together in little crystalline structures. So you'll have vanadium, and then you'll have tungsten, and it'll all kind of combined together, but your crystalline structure will be bigger. Those chunks of metal will be bigger in there. And so to overcome segregation, they developed this process whereby they take the metal and they shoot it at high speeds and high pressure into a pure nitrogen-rich environment. The metal instantly solidifies and precipitates down as powder, which they scoop up, they take and put into a press and a mold, and they press at extremely high pressures and high temperatures, below the melting point, but still hot enough that it binds together. Same thing a blacksmith does, except for with the super steels, they use continuous pressure instead of a hammer to press hot metal together. And then that forms a chunk of steel, which then can be sent off to be machined or worked. By doing it that way, they kind of solve the segregation problem. But the metals that they get are then extremely hard and extremely durable and tough, several times harder or tougher than any other type of steel. So for the new guy, if you're just getting into bushcraft, try some things. These knives aren't expensive. This is like a $20 knife. And this stainless steel one, this is the Spark. You can get the kind of the survival ultra lightweight edition, the Spark, here for around $35-40. And you get this tiny little ferro rod along with the stainless steel blade. And if you're going to do this, I don't even know if they make this offering in carbon steel, because over time that carbon steel edge is going to wear off, whereas a stainless steel scrape in this fire steel is going to last longer. And then on the D2 steel, it should last for a very long time. But anyway, grab a companion in stainless and one in carbon. You can, if it bothers you having the plasticky sheaths, which that bothers me, you can get on eBay and BPS Knife sells a sheath for these, just made out of pure leather with a little dangly. I bought 2 of them because I love the sheath. I like leather. I don't like plastic. The handles are just this TPE overmolded rubbery type feeling. TPE is thermal plastic elastomer, something like that. And it's this knife has such a good edge, but and it's just plastic. It's a rubbery plastic, but you can get leather sheaths for any of these knives, and it just makes them that much more fun to have and to carry around, and it seems a little more sustainable, even though you're still getting a plastic sheath. But anyway, get one of each and see how you like it, and if eventually you want to move up to a tool steel knife or super steel knife, then go for it. But it doesn't matter. You can still do all the same things with a a carbon steel blade as you can do with a stainless blade, as you can do with a tool steel or super steel blade. The difference is with a carbon blade, you gotta take care of it. I carry chapstick and I rub it on the blade. I'm being stalked by an angry squirrel right now. Yeah, I hear you. So I'll just take some of my chapstick and I'll put it on the blade and just rub it around, you know, and that kind of keeps it from going wonky. Anyway, that's really the gist of it right there. Your knife is your most important tool, so, you know, without one there's not, I mean, you can substitute other things, you can try to substitute your axe, but for carving there's really, I think the knife is the most important tool in your bushcraft arsenal. So if you like a knife to start out with that kind of will help tell your story, and you got these little designs in there that you got these designs in here that kind of help tell your story, then there's no problem with getting a carbon steel blade. I don't know if they make carbon steel in a super steel form, but that's beside the point. Anyway, love your faces, and I'll see you on the next adventure. Bye.